On the quiet suburban street of Saratoga Trail in the Wyndham Hills subdivision of Frederick, Colorado, life seemed to move at a gentle, predictable pace. It was a community of new builds and young families, a place designed for comfort and security. And at its heart, the Watts family home seemed like a perfect picture of the American dream. A spacious, 5-bedroom house, a symbol of success and stability for a family that appeared to have it all. It was a place filled with the sounds of children's laughter, the everyday chaos, and the profound warmth of family life. Chris Watts, the 33-year-old father, was known to friends and neighbors as a quiet, sometimes shy but devoted husband. He was seen as a hands-on, doting dad to his 2 young daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste, affectionately known as Cece. His wife, 34-year-old Shanann, was 15 weeks pregnant with their 3rd child, a son they had already decided to name Nico. Shanann was the vibrant, outgoing heart of the family, and she often shared their happy moments on social media. For her, it was more than just a hobby. As a successful promoter for the multi-level marketing company Lavelle, her life was her brand. Her posts painted a detailed and curated portrait of a loving, tight-knit family. They showed a life built on smiles, shared holidays, and family vacations. Her feed was a constant stream of the everyday joys of raising children, from bedtime stories to backyard adventures. To anyone looking in from the outside, through the glowing screen of a smartphone, Chris Watts was the very definition of a family man, a steady and reliable figure at the center of a beautiful, growing family. But this carefully polished image, like a fragile veneer, was about to be shattered into 1,000,000 unrecognizable pieces in the most brutal way imaginable. The weekend of August 10th, 2018, Shanann was in Arizona for a Lavelle work conference. It was a trip she was excited about, a chance to connect with colleagues and celebrate her success. Her flight back to Denver was delayed, and it was late when her friend and colleague, Nicole Atkinson, dropped her off at home. At approximately 1:48 a.m. on the morning of Monday, August 13th, Shanann Watts, tired but home, walked through her front door for the very last time. Later that morning, Nicole Atkinson grew worried. Shanann, who was 15 weeks pregnant and had some health concerns, missed a scheduled doctor's appointment at 10 a.m. Nicole tried calling. She sent text messages. All went unanswered. The concern mounted with each passing hour of silence. This wasn't like Shanann at all. She was always connected, always responsive. Her phone, a constant link to her friends, family, and business. The digital silence was heavy and deeply unnatural. A stark, terrifying contrast to the vibrant online presence she so meticulously maintained. Unable to shake a feeling that something was terribly wrong, Nicole drove to the Watts home. When no one answered the door, she contacted Chris, who was at work. Then, at 1:40 p.m., she made the call that officially set the investigation in motion. She dialed 911 and requested a welfare check. When officers from the Frederick Police Department arrived, they were met by a seemingly concerned Chris Watts, who had just returned from his job at Anadarko Petroleum. Body camera footage from that day captures a man methodically playing the part of a worried husband. He calmly walked officers through his quiet, eerily tidy home. The beds were made. There were no signs of a struggle, no indication of forced entry. Everything was in its place. He pointed out Shanann's white Lexus in the garage, noting that the children's car seats were still inside. He showed them her phone, left on the kitchen counter, and her wedding ring on the master bedroom's bedside table. Her purse and essential medications were also found inside the house. He told the officers that he and Shanann had stayed up late, having an emotional conversation after she got home. He claimed he woke up around 5:15 a.m. to get ready for work, saw Shanann and the girls still in bed, and left. His demeanor was unnervingly measured, his words carefully chosen, almost as if reciting from a script. He suggested that perhaps Shanann had taken the girls and gone to a friend's house to cool off after their discussion. It was a plausible, rational explanation. He appeared cooperative, helpful, just another man bewildered and trying to make sense of his family's sudden, inexplicable disappearance. This initial footage, when viewed now with the knowledge of what was to come, is profoundly chilling. The man on the screen is a mask of calm concern, a study in deception. It was a performance so convincing that it initially deflected suspicion, buying him precious time. But behind this carefully constructed facade of the worried husband, a horrifying and monstrous truth was hidden in plain sight. The police body cam footage stands in stark, sickening contrast to the joyful family photos that once filled Shanann's social media feed. One depicted a life of vibrant love, the other a sterile, silent stage where that life had been extinguished. The smiling father in the pictures, the worried husband on the video, they were two sides of the same man, one a fiction, the other a performer in a tragedy he himself had authored. The central, terrifying question began to form in the minds of investigators and a watching public. How could a man who appeared to love his family so deeply, who was about to welcome a son, be involved in their disappearance? The answer, buried beneath layers of lies and a meticulously crafted public persona, would reveal a darkness far more profound and disturbing than anyone could have possibly imagined. In the days that followed Shanann, Bella, and Celeste's disappearance, a storm of media attention began to gather over the quiet suburban streets of Frederick, Colorado. The mystery of the missing mother and her two young daughters gripped the nation, transforming a local tragedy into a national headline. On August 14th, with his family still missing, Chris Watts took to the local news, standing on the front porch of the home he once shared with them. His face was a carefully constructed mask of pained confusion. To many viewers, he was the image of a distraught husband and father lost in a waking nightmare. He stood in front of cameras and pleaded for the safe return of his family. His performance was detailed, almost rehearsed. He spoke directly to his wife and children, as if they were watching from somewhere just out of reach. "Shanann, Bella, Celeste," he began, "if you're out there, just come back." He told the world the house felt empty without them, a hollow shell of what it once was. He described his daughters with an unnerving specificity. He mentioned their favorite toys, the blankets they couldn't sleep without, and the small, intimate routines that made up the fabric of their lives. It was a portrait of domestic bliss, now shattered. "I just want them back," he said, his voice cracking with what appeared to be overwhelming emotion. "I just want them to come home." The public, for the most part, was convinced. This public appeal amplified his image as a heartbroken victim, a father desperately searching for his loved ones. But even as the nation sympathized, a very different picture was emerging behind closed doors. As the investigation intensified, this carefully crafted image began to crack. To the trained eyes of law enforcement, his performance was riddled with red flags. A multi-agency task force, including seasoned Frederick Police Department investigators, Colorado Bureau of Investigation agents, and the FBI, started to piece together a different narrative. They delved into a mountain of digital evidence. Phone records, GPS data from their vehicles and cell phones, and the intricate details of the family's life and finances. Every text message, every social media post, every financial transaction was scrutinized, creating a complex web of relationships, stresses, and secrets. They re-examined Chris Watts' statements, comparing his media interviews with his official police interviews, searching for inconsistencies. The timeline he provided for the morning of the disappearance, a morning he claimed was completely normal, started to show fractures. Small details didn't add up. His story began to fray at the edges under the immense weight of forensic scrutiny and digital evidence. The investigation was a slow and methodical process of peeling back layers of deception, each layer revealing a more disturbing truth than the last. This documentary will explore that process in detail, examining both the motive and the method behind one of the most shocking crimes in recent memory. We will deconstruct the evidence as the investigators saw it, piece by piece. We will analyze the profound psychological shift that occurred within Chris Watts, exploring how a man could present one face to the world, the doting family man, while hiding a monstrous secret. What was the motive that drove him to annihilate his own family? Was it financial pressure, marital strife, or something else entirely? We will investigate the affair he was having with a co-worker, a relationship he desperately tried to conceal. We'll examine his desperate desire to erase his old life for what he perceived as a clean slate, a future unburdened by responsibility. Furthermore, we will dissect his method. This was not a crime of passion, but a calculated act. We will look at how Chris Watts used his job at Anadarko Petroleum and his intimate knowledge of its vast, isolated work sites to commit and conceal his horrific acts. His familiarity with the remote oil fields provided him with what he believed was the perfect cover, a grim opportunity to dispose of evidence. He chose a desolate landscape he believed would keep his secrets buried forever, hidden in plain sight amidst the machinery of his daily work. By contrasting the happy, curated family photos and social media posts with the cold, hard evidence meticulously gathered from phone data, GPS trackers, and the crime scenes themselves, we will trace the definitive path from a seemingly ordinary family man to a calculated, cold-blooded killer. This is the story of a mask of sanity, meticulously worn to deceive friends, family, and the entire world. It is the story of the methodical investigation that shattered that mask, and the terrifying reality it was designed to hide. To understand the motive, we must look at the summer of 2018. While Shanann was in North Carolina for 6 weeks trying to mend their fractured marriage through distance, Chris Watts was experiencing a psychological rebirth. He had lost weight, transformed his physique, and most importantly, he had met Nicole Kessinger. A co-worker at Anadarko Petroleum, Kessinger represented the clean slate Chris desperately craved. Their affair was not a casual fling, it was a total immersion into a second identity. Chris was living the life of a bachelor, hiding his family behind a calculator vault app on his phone. Digital forensics later revealed that while his pregnant wife was sending him heart-wrenching letters about saving their family, Chris was searching the internet for love songs and secluded vacation spots for his mistress. He wasn't just having an affair, he was mentally evicting his wife and daughters from his reality. The girls were no longer children to him. They were variables in a financial and emotional equation that no longer added up. The method began in the early hours of Monday, August 13th. Shanann arrived home at 1:48 a.m., exhausted from a business trip. What followed was what Chris described as an emotional conversation. He claimed he asked for a separation, but the physical evidence tells a colder story. As Shanann lay in bed, Chris Watts committed the ultimate betrayal. There were no defensive wounds on Shanann. Forensics suggest she may have been strangled while sleeping or in a state of shock. But the horror was only beginning. He loaded his pregnant wife's body into the back of his work truck. Then he did the unthinkable. He loaded his 2 living daughters, Bella and Celeste, into the vehicle alongside their mother's remains. For 45 minutes, he drove across the Colorado plains to a remote oil site known as Shervey 319. We can only imagine the psychological horror those children went through. He was calm, he was purposeful, he was a man going to work. At the oil site, the depravity of the method reached its peak. Chris buried Shanann in a shallow grave near the tanks. Then, one by one, he took the lives of his daughters. He smothered Celeste first with her favorite blanket. Bella, just 4 years old, witnessed it. Her final words, "Daddy, no," as revealed by Chris's later confessions from prison, remain some of the most haunting syllables in criminal history. He pushed their small bodies through 8-inch openings into massive, crude oil tanks, believing the toxic liquid would dissolve the evidence and his guilt. He then went about his workday, sending normal texts to co-workers, even checking his fantasy football league. To Chris, the problem was solved. The slate was clean, but the method had a flaw. Chris Watts was not as good a liar as he believed. The investigation, led by the FBI and the CBI, was a masterclass in psychological pressure. During a high-stakes polygraph test, Agent Tammy Lee dismantled his calm exterior. When confronted with his catastrophic failure of the lie detector, Chris's mask shattered. He offered a partial truth, a tactical confession. He blamed Shanann, claiming he saw her strangling the girls on the baby monitor and killed her in a fit of rage. It was a desperate attempt to maintain his image as a good guy while admitting to murder. But investigators didn't blink. They knew that a man who hides his family in oil tanks is not a victim of a snap. He is a predator who has completed a task. In November 2018, faced with a mountain of forensic evidence, Chris Watts pleaded guilty to 9 counts, including first-degree murder. He traded a trial for his life, receiving 5 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. The case of Chris Watts leaves us with a terrifying question. How do we recognize the monster in the mirror? He had no criminal record, no history of violence. He was the nice guy next door, but through the analysis of his motive and his method, we see the truth. The motive was a narcissistic desire for a life without consequences. The method was a cold, industrial erasure of those who loved him most. As we close this deconstruction, remember, monsters don't always scream. Sometimes they stand in the background of a family photo, smiling, waiting for the lights to go out. We must remember Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico, not for how they died, but for the lives they should have lived. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Subscribe and join our community as we continue to seek the truth behind the shadows.